So I'm going to talk today about the background about the Prince Harry Doreen Lawrence versus the Daily Mail up at the High Court. So I have some background about this because I was personally involved. I'm one of the private investigators named, specifically around Doreen Lawrence and others. So I've been involved with Hacked Off since 2016. And of course, Hacked Off are the ones who, well, it's a man called Graham Johnson who gathers the information for the lawyers to move forward and to take the case forward. Graham Johnson's ex News of the World. He was a strange reporter on News of the World. He did things like make up the Beast of Bodmin Moor when Rebecca Brooks wanted this Beast of Bodmin Moor who was on out in Cornwall. He thought, I know, I'll just take a picture of a jaguar at the local zoo and say, yeah, I captured the beast. And it cost Murdoch millions because he had to reprint. Also, Graham Johnson was behind the Young Guns with BBC Panorama, where they wanted young people holding guns, and there weren't any. So he had to pay this kid to hold the gun. The poor kid ended up going to prison for possessing firearms, which of course he never did. He was paid £50 to do it. So there's a bit of a strange one here that's going down because it's a bit odd of the lawyers to have hired Graham Johnson to do it. He is a convicted phone hacker himself, and he has this background of wild and wonderful inventions. So what has happened at the moment, I've been named in the court documents, and I was involved with them for a long time. I met up with them, and recently a journalist has said it was to sell my remittances, but no, totally different. I had met up with Graham Johnson just for fun, really, and he didn't know I worked for the Sun and the Mail. He just thought I'd worked for the News of the World, so I informed him of this, and he said, let's get the Mail. That's what we want. We want to destroy the Mail. I personally didn't give a damn. I'd worked for the Mail for over 10 years, and they just dropped me because of this phone hacking. Not me personally phone hacking. It was phone hacking scandal broke, and they didn't want to use private investigators anymore. But by that time, I'd already got my balance in the Sunday Times and was a journalist. So I felt a little bit angry at the Mail, to say the least. And so I started this relationship with them. He then said, well, we'll buy them off you. And I said, yeah, okay. He offered me money for them. And then the penny dropped that I would have to say that I did something illegal to get the Mail into trouble, but I didn't. So I thought, hang on. I mean, I could have obviously taken the money off them, given them the remittances, and then said that, but I felt slightly sorry for them. I met up with the MP, had dinner with the MP, Evan Harris. My son was there, he was 12, and Evan Harris said, you can do this the nice way or the nasty way. And I felt pretty put out because, if I'm having dinner with somebody, I'm not there to muck them around. I was obviously going to help. I really didn't need that. I have delayed reactions. I wish now I'd have got the lemon tart we were eating and just squished it in his face. I'm pretty angry about that, especially as it was in front of my child. It makes me appear weak, and I don't like that. So the penny dropped that they need me to have done something illegal, and I hadn't. So I thought, hang on, I'm not really interested in this. I will take money off them, and then they will get angry with me because obviously I'd felt the gangster vibe. Not only that, Evan had sent along someone to meet me, and this person had made a veiled threat about knowing people that plant cocaine on women if they don't play ball. Well, both these conversations are taped and with somebody else. not with me at my premises. And I shall make them available if I'm harmed. If I'm not harmed, I've no axe to grind. I know people are hungry for money. So this went on, and didn't want to be I didn't want to be connected. At that time, Evan had paid for a flat for me in Raysbury. It was really nice. It was Riverside, and so I was in this quandary about not wanting to carry on with them because I couldn't give them what they wanted, and it felt false pretenses. So I pulled out for their sake, really, and for just honesty's sake. And next thing, I was burgled, and everything was taken: my computers, my laptops, even a broken old one that thieves wouldn't have taken. And because I just moved into this Riverside house that he'd paid for, my all my tech was at the end of my bed and my cameras, and so they would have had to come in my bedroom, pick them up, and go past the dressing table, which was at the door. And on the dressing table was a vintage silver Gucci watch. I still have that watch. The burglars didn't take it, and I wasn't wearing it. And a gold bracelet. So strange burglars. And they actually didn't make any mess. Now, I had gone in the morning, left, and couldn't shut the door. And I used to leave to do the school run very, very early, as my son's school was a long way away. And it was about 6:30, 7, very cold, I think, at the time. I was trying to shut the door and couldn't. And I thought, what the hell? What is this? And I couldn't shut the door. So I couldn't lock it, but I could shut it. So I left it unlocked, locked the outside gates and the garage so nobody could get in, and did the school run, came back, got in touch with the estate agents. They came, showed me how to, they said, I don't know why, this has happened. I went to have a bath, felt very stressed out, thought I want to type something up, went to the end of my bed and there was nothing there. Phoned the police straight away, and they showed me how the door had been jemmied, and they said that's why you couldn't lock it, because look. And they also said that the burglars had come in during the night and it was a professional job. So I was pretty shaken, I was upset. My son ended up not being able to sleep. Graham Johnson still wanted to have interactions with me. He said, oh, shame you were burgled, but just focus on you and your son weren't beaten up. I think that's a strange rejoinder, but never mind. He then said, have you got any Daily Mail invoices left? So I said, well, yeah, actually, because I put some of them in a folder. I think there was about 30 more. Well, hundreds have been stolen. I worked for them for over 10 years. Hundreds upon hundreds have been stolen. They were all in this briefcase, again at the end of my bed, with everything, all my private stuff in. That was taken as well. But I had these other invoices. And I also had some other News of the World invoices as well, but they were just interested in the mail. So he said, well, meet me in Richmond, and you probably need some cash. I'll give you a couple of £100, bring me those invoices. So I said, okay. I believe that, he and Hactoff hadn't burgled me, and despite journalists that I know saying they had, it's an opinion, I'm guessing. It might have been, as Graham Johnson said, scallies. But why didn't they take that watch? It's literally gorgeous. I can show a picture of it to anybody. It's damn nice. If I was a burglar, I would take it. And they can't be that, oh, we didn't see it. Well, you just seen it when you're walking out the door. So anyway, I was going to meet him, and because I've known Graham Johnson for many, many years when he worked at the News of the World and the Sunday Mirror. So he was a known quantity to me. And he was somebody that people didn't really like. He wasn't popular. He was left out of parties. People thought he was a bit of a scally. But I liked him. I actually volunteered for the RAF and voluntary PR work. And I met a girl there, and she was madly in love with him. I wondered why, but I suppose he's got a certain charm. Certainly, Tina Brown seems gaga about him. I suppose he's got more attractive as he's got older in a gangster kind of way. Um, so anyway, I didn't mind meeting him because obviously, we can vibe in the same way because I've known him for like hundreds of years. So arranged to meet him. As I was leaving, I noticed the toilet had flooded, the downstairs toilet had flooded, and it was really bad. So I rang somebody, and they said, "Oh, we can't come until till tomorrow." And I'm like, "Well, okay, I had to stay over near my son's school to because the school run you couldn't go back and fro; it was too far, and so I would just sit in the library all day and wait for his school to finish. So I that day I was gonna meet Graham, and I was pleased to do that because it was sitting with somebody, having lunch, spending the day positively instead of on my own. And anyway, just dropped my son at school, called into the head's office about something, went in. When I was in there, got a call from the, I don't know who it was, some people that do the suction on water, the pipe in the garden had, oh God, but it was somebody, and they said, actually, it's not tomorrow, we can come today, in the next hour. And I'm like, oh God, here I'm sitting waiting for an appointment with the head. I'm supposed to meet Graham Johnson. Anyway, I thought, well, I've got to go back there because literally water was pouring out of this loo. No real choice. And the guy said, "Oh, we can't come tomorrow. Now it'll be next week." And there was a smell and it was unhealthy. And so I made the decision that I'd get in the car and go back, drive all the way back. It was a 2-hour drive to get back there, but I'd have to go fast to meet these guys that said, "Yeah, we can come straight away." So I was really, really stressed. And I rang Graham and I said, "I can't meet you today." And he was so angry. He said, "I'm going to come to your place and kick the fucking door down if you don't meet me right now." And I was pretty upset because I'd just been burgled and I didn't feel safe in the house. And for him to say that, it's really, I think I'm owed an apology, but I don't think it's forthcoming. Anyway, it totally ruined my relationship with them, and I didn't have a relationship with them at all until 2000 and maybe 21 or 22. I can't recall, when I was approached by James Hanning, who's the ex-editor of The Independent on Sunday, who I knew from my days on Fleet Street. And he said he wanted to write a book about me and my life as a PI. Now, that's not that unusual because I published my memoir twice, Searching for Daddy and In for the Kill. And I was actually in the middle of writing another one, but from a different angle. And people might think, why do you write about yourself over and over again? But it's like to see some kind of sense to my life and see. So I do it for myself, really. I don't do it with my eye on money. And so he said, "I want to write a book about your life." So I'm like, well, okay. And he said, "Well, I need an affidavit for it." So we worked on this affidavit. We met up a few times, went to dinner, quite a lot of times. We went to dinner, Picture and Piano. We went to dinner in Blake's in Richmond Hill. We went to dinner at Coat in Richmond. We went to dinner at the Ivy in Richmond. So we went out quite a lot. Oh, and we met Kew Gardens Cafe. And so we worked on this affidavit, and it ended up 70 pages long. It was all about my life. And then I started to think, hang on, this is James Hanning. He's very, very posh, and he's an attractive man. He's ex Eton, and he's an editor of a very powerful paper. I'm no stranger to editors of powerful papers, but C&D, it's a good paper, Indie on Sunday, and he had written David Cameron's biography, and I can be vain, but I started to think, hang on, David Cameron's biographer, Christine Hart's biographer, doesn't quite meld, and I started to not believe. I went ahead with this affidavit, and it seemed to me to be all about the Daily Mail. They want the Daily Mail. At the time, I was emailing Kenneth Bianchi, aka the Hillside Strangler serial killer, who was in Walla Walla prison. Somebody had contacted me online. I used to correspond with Bianchi and wrote a book about him, In for the Kill, and Ian Brady, who I'd also met, and 3 times. And Bianchi I'd met twice. So I'd written a book about him, In for the Kill, didn't write to Bianchi anymore. Somebody contacted me on Facebook and said, oh, you upset Kenneth Bianchi, you were out of order, he's ill now because of you. And a girl called Catherine, beautiful young woman, and I said, okay, I'll write an apology, fair enough. And she goes, no, there's no need to write, they have email, which I thought was weird, but she showed me how to set it up. It's called JPay, and apparently we've now got that here in England, but our system is called Email a Prisoner. I've been emailing the lawyer Giovanni De Stefano, who gets out this month, about a film project, but the Americans have the JPay, and the JPay is, okay, with the English one, you write your email, feels like it takes days to reach them, but with the American, it's like it doesn't go through anything, so you have these long lines of emails, and it's just like a normal email. So once it's set up and you've paid for it, I could literally so I emailed Bianchi, he came back to me, and it was a massive back and fro, hundreds of emails back and fro. What I found very curious was I could be watching, like one night I was watching American Horror, texted him, because it seemed like a text, you just literally get this app, and said, oh, it's terrifying, American Horror. And he texts back seconds later and laughed and said, why is it scary? I suppose it's not scary to a serial killer. But it was interesting because he is an American lawyer. He's qualified at the bar. He's a qualified lawyer, and supposedly a good one. There was a playing card company that used his image, and he didn't want to do that, so he sued them and broke them. He didn't, collect the money, but he finished the company. So he's pretty good at legals. I know one time he was going to sue John Blake, and John Blake was pretty worried. So that was interesting, because the legal demand, I was sent a copy of that, and it was really well worded. I mean, he's got a very, very, very good brain. Anyway, so I sent him this affidavit that James Hanning had set out after interviewing me and taping me over our nights together, and he looked at it, because I'd been filling it in. I'd literally been working on it for months, and he said, Chris, this is Kenneth Bianchi, he said, you've been working on this for months, would you get paid for it? And I'm like, well, no, but James Hanning is working with Hacked Off, and Graham Johnson then had met me for another dinner at the Ivy, and I have to say their lavender lady cocktails are rocking. This is now summer 2022, and he said, well, Graham will publish it. He's got a publishing company now, Hacked Off are publishers, because it's not cheap. But maybe they were going to set one up. I don't know. So we all had dinner, and he said, "I'll offer you 10 grand for your book and your life rights." And had I signed the affidavit? I can't remember. But Bianchi said, "Don't sign it. It's not actually an affidavit." And so I was looking at it, and then I said, "I don't mind signing it. I don't mind signing it." Um, so I had had this dinner with Johnson, and he had said to me, "We offer 10 grand for this and your life rights." Now that alerted me because I've published with Hodder and Stoughton and Transworld, and I had Jane Campion's sister offered to make my life into a movie, only because of them meeting two serial killers, nothing else. And so I thought, hang on, mate, I've just rewritten my memoir, and there's massive more insight into spiritual targeting, the elite, MK Ultra, all that kind of thing, making it a far more interesting book. And I wanted that angle to go out there. And so I said to him, "Well, hang on, I can't sign my life story over to you because I've had interest in it and I want to own it." And he went, "No, no, no, I'm not interested in serial killers. I just want your work for the press." And I said, "Mate, with respect, it's not that fascinating to the public, which it's not really. And unless, these tedious people that like that kind of thing, but I certainly don't want to pander to them." So I thought that was jolly weird. Went off, didn't want to sign it. They said, "Well, sign the affidavit anyway, because you might want to do it." Kenneth Bianchi, aka the Hillside Strangler, was saying, "It's not an affidavit, it's a trap for some reason, don't sign it." However, I went along just to people please James Hanning, my new best buddy, and signed it. But before I signed it, I noticed that it was altered. I mean, it's quite funny. I sent it as well, just as proof, to Bianchi, and I said, "This is the one that I'd agreed to and added bits to, and this is the one they've sent me to sign. Look at this." And there was these things in it that, "Oh, I admit to do this, I admit to do that." It was almost funny. And he said, "Don't go near these people, don't go near them." And I said, "No, it's okay." So I went to meet Hanning. I took my version, and I thought it was quite funny. My version was given to the lawyer, signed. We signed it, went for dinner at the Ivy. I mean, is this all just because I'm pathetically lonely? Probably. Went to the Ivy that night. Who was there but this horrible woman from the BBC? I won't say her name. She was really rancid. She says to me, "What's it like over steak? What's it like to," and Lavender Lady cocktails again, "what's it like to have lived a life of crime?" I thought, what the fuck, do you think I'm Billy the Kid or a drug dealer or something like that? I said, hang on. I've worked for the Sunday Times. I'm a journalist in my own right. I'm the only journalist to have interviewed the real IRA. Written 2 goddamn books. I'm a mother, and I worked for the press, back in the 90s, early 2000s. I certainly didn't do anything illegal because I was always warned by other PIs, "Don't work for the press." And I thought, no, I'm going to work for them because my boyfriend, Phil Hall, worked there and I wanted to be a journalist. But I thought, I'm never going to trust those dirtbags and do anything illegal for them because they would record you and blackmail you. They like to blackmail celebrities and they like to blackmail their staff, and they certainly like to blackmail private investigators. So I thought, no. What I'll do, I'll let them think maybe I'm doing something illegal, but I won't. I'll find a way around it. And they're actually very thick people. They're easy to, pretend things to. And I remember saying to one of them, "How did you find that out?" I just asked the person. And I went, "Yeah, well, I hacked into the mainframe." Oops, I shouldn't say that. Now, I can barely turn on my laptop, and I don't even know what a mainframe is. I saw that in a movie one time. This is how credulous these people are. They're all a bit want to be James Bond. Anyway, James Hanning, to this chubby little gingerhead freak, because she was a freak. Because who says that to somebody when you're actually eating? I was actually eating at the time when she accused me of being Billy the Kid. And what an idiot of a journalist. Who does that when you're supposed to have lights, cameras, and then make an accusation like that? I mean, I would have had the same reaction. But anyway, James Hanning, ever the gallant man, jumped in for me and said, you know, Christine didn't know that to use a subterfuge when you're talking to someone is illegal, which is lying. It's not data theft, it's lying. So apparently you can't lie to people, which is odd, really, you know, because Graham Johnson has told me things. And, you know, I feel like, so hang on, aren't you lying to people around you, you know? And it's like, you know, where does that stop? So we had that conversation. I let Claire off, walked up. Oh, shit, I said I don't. It doesn't matter. I let her off, walked up the road with her, got home, and wrote to Bianchi about it. He said, how did that go? Wrote to him about it, and he said to me, hang on, there's two reactions. One reaction is, Claire seemed very nice from the BBC. The other reaction is, fucking bitch. And I had to point out that I do have delayed reactions. If people treat me like shit, I tend to have a really big delayed reaction on it. And when it comes, it's quite strong. And I said, what she said to me is really ignorant when, since I spent my life in care, and I have worked my bollocks off every day of my fucking life. And I've never been supported by a man, never even been given a drop of jewellery by a man. I've paid my way in my life. I have just paid my way, and I've worked my balls off. I've been a criminal. What the actual fuck? Now, in the private investigations world, there is criminals. There's Jonathan Rees. He specialised in data theft, and they're known, these people, in the private investigations world, and in London, where it's based, in the UK. It's an interesting world. You've got the top level, where you've got the Kroll, the GPW, the Ciros, the Stuart Paul Robs. You've got that level. Usually they're ex-MI6 men, and below it, you've got ex-CID, ex-MI5, maybe ex-Customs and Excise. Then you've got the lower level of, and it's male-dominated. There's not any women, as far as I know. Maybe a few housewives that set themselves up as it, but they're not playing in that world. They're not really, involved in it. The lower level is private investigators set themselves up. They've never been connected with any organisations or trained in investigations. So this is how it's laid out. And this book deal, I refused it. I agreed to be interviewed by the BBC. As I was interviewed by the BBC, there's a whole Sienna Miller story, but I've told that before, so I won't go into that. They asked me about Doreen Lawrence because there was a remittance advice with her name on for the Daily Mail. I talked about that, and they said to me, oh, they're racist, aren't they? And I'm like, who, what? And they stopped filming and made me say that the Daily Mail was racist, and that's why, they'd gone anywhere near Doreen Lawrence. I felt I was a bit rich, but what do I care, I mean, this is rich person versus rich person, powerful person versus, the BBC, not the filmmaker. Powerful organisation versus another powerful. Why do I care? It's nothing to do with me, really. So do I care the BBC want to intimate that the Daily Mail are racist, especially around Doreen Lawrence? I don't care. So I just said, okay, what do you want me to say? So then they started the cameras rolling again, and I said what they wanted me to say. Although I did think at the time, is this right? Because it's not actually what I want to say from my heart. Although I didn't care, I don't care about smearing someone as racist. Why do I care when it's like rich and powerful organisation? I don't care. However, it's dishonest, isn't it? It's not my thoughts. It's their thoughts they want me to say. And that struck me as like dirty. And anyway, going back to the book thing, Graham was pushing on the book thing. There was a filmmaker with the BBC. He started ringing me constantly. This was over Sienna Miller and Jude Law. Now, I had said I'd rung Jude Law, but only to show off in front of this mother and baby group. And he didn't believe me. He just didn't believe me. And it was really horrible. This guy kept ringing me on withheld numbers. He kept harassing me. And I didn't know how to deal with him. I just didn't know how to deal with him. I wasn't getting in touch with my anger, and thinking back, I should have just let my ex deal with him. But I wish I had, but I didn't. I just kept answering the phone to him because my son was at school, and so of course you have to get you have to answer withheld numbers, and it was him. And sometimes he would just say nothing, and then he would go and it was like it was really weird. And eventually it had a horrific effect on me, and it was pretty nasty. Thinking back now, it's nasty, and I just wish to God I'd have got in touch with my anger. I just for some reason it was like a flat tire. I couldn't, and that happens to me sometimes. And he sent me to a really, really bad place. Really, really bad place. And he should compensate me for that, because what he was doing wasn't journalism. And I was since told that it's when you tread on somebody. So he was literally bullying me to get a result. And, yes, I'm suing the BBC. Am I desperate for money off them? No, I think they'll wheedle their way out of it. And of course, he'll deny it because he's dishonest. But it's like, well, after doing that to somebody, you don't get to have a nice life. People must think God is blind. It's not blind. God watches everything we do. And if we hurt people, it comes back on us. When I worked for the press, because I'd been a front page story, had my life ruined, Phil Hall dumped me in a brothel and walked up and down as I laid on the bed and said, wow, we really do ruin lives, don't we? Now, these journalists, they're psychos. Graham Johnson was one of them. I was never one of them. Why? Firstly, I've got a good heart. Secondly, I'm very spiritually connected. Thirdly, it had happened to me. So I've been on the receiving end. So I wasn't a psychopath. In fact, when I thought people were being hurt, I would tip them off and ruin investigations. And I did that many, many times. Ruined it for them. Tip the people off. Anyway, so going back to, and I didn't want to work for them, but I was proud of working for the Mail, because I didn't think they did hurt people. That was my impression of them. Not that I ever read the bloody paper, but I just thought they were so polite, so middle class. Surely these polite people don't. But having said that, that BBC filmmaker guy, he was middle class and he was a nasty bastard. So you live and learn, and I'm living and learning, and I'm thinking that's why I didn't know how to react to him, really. Usually around men, I'm okay. I can be like straight with them, but when they're sort of more feminine, like women, I tend to get that delayed reaction thing come in, because my mother beat me. She used to beat me, and so it rather flattens your ability to, if you're whipped regularly, it flattens your ability to go, fucking do that to me, because I have to suck it up from my mother, and not bite back, not even be angry. I used to have to sit there and eat my dinner, then looking deeply into her eyes, her monitoring reactions. Is there any insolence in your eyes? I mean, it was pretty nasty stuff. Adoptive mother there. So, yeah, going back to the book thing, I've recently, following the trial now, because obviously I'm named as regards Doreen Lawrence and probably others, so I know I'm one of the 10 private investigators. They'll probably come out and name, and there'll probably be a lot of shaming and attacking. I don't really care. I'm not, I've never been popular with people, so Doesn't make any difference, really, no change. So, but I've been reading that Gavin Burrows is the key private investigator in this. And Gavin Burrows would be one of the ones on the lower tier. He made himself a private investigator. I don't know if he's worked for anybody that has any connections to the security services. I don't think so. But you can go and see a video of him on YouTube, and he's not being mean about him, but he hasn't got the gravitas of these guys like Stuart Paul Robb, the guys that run Kroll. So he hasn't got that going. And, you can see him on the net saying, I'm a player. And you wouldn't catch one of these ex-MI6 officers talking like that. So, I've known people like that before, and they do tend to go off into James Bond land, and I did this, and then I did that, and then I bugged that. And he says he bugged the Middletons. Now, if you really did bug the Middletons, wouldn't you keep quiet about it? You would, wouldn't you? Because you'd think, hang on, aren't the police going to knock on the door? And he's come out with all these weird and wonderful things and said he did them for the Mail. And Graham Johnson offered him 60 grand for the story. So the story's got wilder and more exciting and more more James Bond. More with him starring as James Bond. This Gavin Burrows. And I thought, wow, I mean, how are they believing what he's saying? Because I know the world of private investigators, and on the lower tiers, there's guys like that, and they're actually very, very plausible. And why they're plausible is they've been around that business for a long, long time. They've heard stories about the guys that are the real players, and they research them, they recite them, then they recycle them as if they're their stories, and the people around them sometimes suck it up, sometimes roll their eyes and think, what a windbag, but some of them suck it up. Obviously, Graham Johnson, who doesn't know shit about the private investigations world, has sucked it all up. He's passed it to the lawyers. The lawyers, apparently, there's an attraction with him and Angie Lee, so I was told this morning. Angie, there's a woman lawyer. I actually saw her. I saw her at the trial when I was up there recently with Justice Mann. I think she's a very attractive, small woman, very feisty. Apparently she's believing Graham, and this is all a bit Beast of Bodmin Moor territory, I think, again. It's Graham taking a shot of the Jaguar and putting it out there. It's just the Beast of Bodmin Moor. And Rebecca Brooks sucked it up. I mean, he's quite good. He's like a bit of a fantasist. And then team it up with Gavin Burrows, who's a fantasist. Because think about it. He's been offered 60 grand for the James Bond book. You've got James Hanning offering to write it. It's the same deal as was offered to me, but 6 times as much more money. So, of course, I mean, I even felt, oh, geez, I'll have to James Bond that up a little bit for people to be interested in, but I'm not interested in doing that. But for 60 grand and James Hanning writing it, of course you're going to have to wheel out a lot of sex. By that I mean a lot of James Bond stuff, and private investigators just don't really do that kind of thing. So he was doing the affidavit, same as I was doing, and he was putting all this stuff in it about the Mail, because of course Graham Johnson just went the Mail. There wasn't ever going to be a book. So he was sexing it up in the affidavit. Oh, I just spied on Liz Hurley and Absel through her window and stuck a bug on the window. And then when I was at it, I went to the Kensington Palace and put a bug under the Queen's bed. And I mean, he's laying it on. Anyway, so next thing, Graham Johnson pays him 30 grand, and he says, where's the rest? Well, to be fair on Graham, if it was really a book, you only get it at the end. But maybe it got to the end of the story. you know, the end, sign the contract, we're going to publish it now. So suddenly Graham Johnson said, oh, you're not having the other £30, not enough storyline in the book. And obviously he'd given a lot because they've started a Prince Harry attending court attack on the Daily Mail on the basis of it. So it's James Bonded up to the nines. But he said, you're not having the 30 grand to poor Gavin Burrows. Gavin Burrows got really angry, went round his house, and apparently there was handbags at dawn outside Graham Johnson's house. So he didn't get the extra 30 grand. Anyway, next thing it was announced that this court hearing was going to take place. So Gavin then went to the Daily Mail and said, oh, I made a lot of stuff or something to that effect. Anyway, now the Daily Mail are announcing, and rightly so, that they have a signed, sworn statement by Gavin Burrows to say that he didn't ever do anything illegal for them. Well, that's no bugging. That's no intercepting phone calls because it's highly illegal. So he's now saying that he didn't do any of it. And I would say 100% hand on my heart that that would be the truth of the matter. You can't do that. You can't do that as a way of gathering evidence for court. I mean, you just can't. You can't go. And I know this is true. I know it happened because they were doing it to me too. You can't go to somebody and say, I've got this glamorous author. James Honey's a very glamorous author. He's friends with Boris Johnson, for God's sake. And he's a good writer. He's recently written Love and Deception, which is a spy story. So, of course, that sexy spy story, MI6 thrown in. You tell that to private investigators of a certain type who want to be on that top pile but are on the bottom pile. And they, of course, get very excited about that. I'm lucky that I only inveigled my way into the top pile because back in the day I was good looking and there was a shortage of women involved. So they certainly used me, but always to put my life in danger with dirt grade spying. So not a fan of those guys. Not a fan of top, middle or bottom, to be honest. So all the press, really, you know, I was used to getting cars with serial killers. I was rapists and serial killers. I was used to go and cozy up to the real IRA, which I made good at, but I was told, you know, get as close as you can. And always with the threat of being kicked out of Fleet Street. It was always there. You're never really fully sitting in there. It's always somewhere you best do good. So this is a pressure that's on in both those worlds. They're male-dominated worlds, and if you're a woman, you know, you can climb up to the top, but they will. Make sure you get a good old kick in when you're there, such as being in Dundalk with the Real IRA. You don't have an easy time of it, especially with an English accent. You do get men who, oh, come in the car with me, I'll take you here, take you there, come back to my house, we'll do this, we'll do that. And they do try and scare you. So my idea was that I would get very close to one of them, have a relationship with one of them. That would keep the others away. I do that trick when I go to Morocco. You know, when you get hassled, I just pick one boy and have him as my, you know, person that I'm with all the time. And that keeps anyone else from begging or conning you in the suit. So it's a good thing to do. I took the second in command. I took the highest because if you take the lowest in those kind of worlds, it doesn't work because highers then will still, you know, peck at you. So this is how it rolls. So it's quite funny. So going back over events, the Daily Mail have in their possession a signed sworn statement to say that everything that Graham Johnson has got is, in fact, the beast of Bodmin Moor, a jaguar and not really a beast. It's so funny. And then you've got Mulcair. Now, Mulcair's not a private investigator, but he loves to be seen in headlines with Private Investigator over the top. And he dares complain about, oh, this has been hard for me and my family. Well, mate, all you had to say was, you're not a private investigator, you were an office boy for a private investigator called John Boyle. John Boyle brought phone hacking into Fleet Street. He also brought it to the Sunday Mirror. He always tried his best to get into the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, and he got a refusal. And he's there, he speaks their language, he's middle class. He's a multimillionaire, lives in Peasemarsh and £10 million estate with a winery. I mean, he literally works for the top level tier because I don't know if he went to Eton, but he certainly mixes in those circles. Something Mulcair could never do. So he wasn't even a private investigator, but all he had to say was, hang on, I just work for a private investigator. The News of the World were allowed to speak to me. They poached me. They told me it was okay to do A, B, and C. I feel ashamed. It wasn't something I would do. End of. But instead of that, he tries to lord it up. And again, he's tried to increase his profile by making up stuff about the Daily Mail. He said, oh, they took my hacking on Simon Hughes. Well, fact is, that was Greg Miskew. Greg Miskew had a long-running relationship with the Mail on Sunday, long before phone hacking was even a twinkle in John Boyle's eye. Isn't it weird John Boyle's never mentioned in this? Was a twinkle in his eye. So the Daily Mail know Greg Miskew. When he rings them with a story, they would have to speak to him and entertain him. And knowing Greg very well, he wouldn't have said to them, oh, I got this through hacking. He would have said need to know basis. He would have said, oh, I got it from a contact. He would have known that they wouldn't have liked it. Of course they wouldn't like that kind of thing. Or John Boyle would have ended up working for them like he did the Sun. He worked for them for the Sun for up to 2009. All the stories there were gotten through hacking, I believe. That's never come out either. Because it's John Boyle, he's never mentioned by these people. So this is Mulcair. He's Mulcair's private investigator number 2. So he will get laughed out of court, basically. So the Daily Mail have said, oh, he's a convicted phone hacker. What he comes out with is rubbish. Well, claiming that the Mail carried out hacking when it's Greg Miskew talking to them, when he would have known them for just decades and did know them, that's not right. I don't think that will wash because it was Greg. So that's that kicked out. And I remember I worked for the Mail for over a decade, and I remember how funny they were. I mean, they were really funny. I would say the work I did was journalistic research. They were really funny about, what you could do and what you couldn't. I would make suggestions, and they would say in very posh voices, no, you can't possibly do that. That's not right. I remember having a story even, which was in the public interest, and I gave it to Dave Dillon of the Mail on Sunday. It was about a chocolate company who'd had a salmonella find, and they'd sent out the chocolate. And I had got it by ringing executive, the man in charge of the whole company, and blagged him. It's what blagging is. It's using a ruse to find out information. Now, I do that. I had done that as in my career as a journalist, stroke PI, because I didn't deem it illegal. I mean, perhaps it is. Didn't know at the time. Send me off to Holloway, though. I'd rather work with Scrubs or Belmarsh, but send me away then, if it is. But anyway, got speaking to the CEO, told him I was there, science lab and yada yada, talking about the different strains of salmonella, making him feel embarrassed because he didn't know, and then eventually he told me about the recent find and how it had gone out and into the mouths of children. Anyway, this was all on tape, and I said to Dave Dillon, print this, it's important. Anyway, he's like, Christine, did you get that through blagging, anybody? And I went, well, of course I did. You think I write, oh, hey, I'm from the Mail on Sunday. Would you tell me about the salmonella that you sent? It's not a small chocolate firm. It's one of the big ones. would you tell me about the salmonella, you know, the little children's mouths? And he went, I don't want that story if you got it through blagging. That's illegal. And I went, well, no, it's not public interest. And he went, yes, it is. I'm going to send you an email right now to say I don't want that story. And then when you get it, you reply to me. Anyway, he sent it. I was going to send a little rude icon back. I'm not going to respond to it. I know Dave Dillon way back. Anyway, so then he rings me and says, you haven't responded to my email. I'm like, are you kidding? He goes, no, I'm not. Respond to it now. I was so angry. I put down, yeah, you don't want the story. You don't really care about children, underline, sent it off to him. So this is how weird and funny they were about illegalities. They were tight ass about it. The idea that they've bugged Liz Hurley and bugged the Middletons or whatever this guy said, it's so funny. I mean, it's just not true. It's not true. But the reason why this guy's done it is because of the offer of the James Bond book. So the public, probably because they don't know all this, they'll be like shaking their heads and go, what's going on? Who's telling the truth? What's happening? We don't really understand it. They can't really be saying they were all bugged when they weren't. How? What's happening? Well, at the bottom of it, sadly, I have to say, is Graham Johnson, because Graham is Graham, and Graham is, oh, hang on, there's no kids in Liverpool holding guns, and the BBC want guns in the hands of children. I know, I'll just buy one and give it to a passing child. Only trouble is that passing child ended up going to prison for 10 years for possessing a firearm. I mean, you know, these people, they don't care. Why? This is how tabloids rolled and now hacked off, and the lawyers are actually using a tabloider, using those same tricks to kind of get at the tabloids. It's kind of weird and creepy, and throw in the mix James Hanning with his posh charisma and his silk cravat, and you've got a whole weird setup. And setups often backfire because there's a lot of people that know the truth of what's been going on for years. I'm just one of them. I mean, there's loads of people that know the inside track on this. So I think as trial, I hope it does go to trial, because this will be amusing when it unfolds. It's actually worthy of a movie because it's just so amusing. It's so funny. And anybody who doesn't know who Gavin Burrows is, just go and see. He's got a YouTube. You can see him there. And you can see how all this has happened to him with the whole thing with Graham and handbags at dawn outside his house. You can see how it's almost like, what is it like? It reminds me of that Richard Gere film where he writes a book about Howard Hughes and makes it all up. This is how this has gone down. And this is, I think if it goes ahead, then the Mail will win. I think they'll pretty much wipe the floor with hacked off. I just think they will, because of because they've got Gavin Burrows on side now, because he was treated so badly by Graham Johnson, and there wasn't a book, it was a con. Oh my God, it's just, you couldn't make it up. Anyway, I just thought I'd enlighten everybody. But I don't know about how to get this out there or how to share it around. So do please share it around so people can hear the backstory, because it's quite interesting. Thanks for listening if you got this far.